Good afternoon, Atlanta. Listen to News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Calling 447-226-1380. Get you involved in the conversation. People, passion, and politics on your Sunday afternoons. Attorney Robert Patillo, Sean Garvey holding down on the ones and twos. Big show today. We're going to do things a little bit different today. One, I got a call this week from Reverend Jesse Jackson saying that they were having an international peace summit in Chicago, Illinois, to discuss these issues of peace, not just in Palestine, with regards to the attacks by the IDF in Israel on the Palestinian people and the ongoing war in Gaza, but the string of wars that has taken place around the world currently. We've paid so much attention to Israel and Gaza, we've forgotten about the humanitarian crisis that exists in Ukraine, where we've had nearly 500,000 people killed since the beginning of this war 2 years ago. In addition to that, we have the military coups that have taken place across the Sahel in Africa, in the nations like Mali and Niger, Burkina Faso, also on the African continent. There's a current war going on still in the Sudan between forces that are nearly splitting the nation directly in half down the middle. At the same time, there's also conflicts in the south of Sudan, in Darfur, which is undergoing continuous attacks by rebel groups. You can look at Ethiopia, where they're on the precipice of war with Eritrea over the issue of port access. You can look at Libya, where they're still in a state of civil war since the U.S. and European forces assassinated Muammar Gaddafi over a decade ago, and the nation is on the verge of splitting directly in half. In the western part of the Congo, there are forces that are attacking Congolese residents of that area, and a war that has killed over 100,000 people over the course of the last 2 years. You have to also look at the residue of the Tigray rebellion, where nearly 600,000 people died, and some numbers push that to up over 1 million. In South America, Venezuela is on the verge of invading their neighbor Guyana over oil rights and also an offshore oil drilling. You can look at throughout the South American continent, where Ecuador has declared a state of emergency because terrorist groups and rebel groups are destroying civil society there. Going to Southeast Asia, there's the saber rattling that's taking place between China and Taiwan. In addition to that, there's an ongoing genocide in Myanmar. You have the situation in Afghanistan, which has descended into a humanitarian crisis, and Taliban forces are in active battle and combat with Iranian forces over water rights in the eastern portion of the country. It seems as if the entire world is on fire. What I just laid out is less than a quarter of the active conflicts that we're seeing worldwide. And for this reason, Reverend Jackson has assembled many human and civil rights activists from around the world this weekend in Chicago to discuss this issue, including people such as Cornel West, Marianne Williamson, Nina Turner, all meeting to discuss how exactly the activists and social justice movement can work together to try to stop this world from descending into chaos. It seems as if militarism and warfare has made a resurgence in ways that we haven't seen in decades. And the calls for peace have to be the casus belli for the rest of us, because we cannot be drugged into another state where we are in worldwide war. There's no difference between one giant war against Hitler or against the Kaiser versus small wars all across the world killing millions of people at a time. I remind people often that from the year 1900 to 1945, over 100 million people died as the direct result of warfare. Over 100 million people in that 45-year span, the first half of the 20th century. If we descend into that again, we have to remember that the weaponry that we have now is far more advanced than what we had 100 years ago. And so we will not be looking at hundreds of millions of people dying. We'll be looking at billions of people dying. Remember that Pakistan and India are still at odds over border regions as a result of the partition by the British at the end of the colonial period. They both have nuclear weapons. It's been stated this week that Iran is in the process of developing nuclear weapons. We know that Israel has nuclear weapons, if not disclosed publicly. Russia, who's at war with Ukraine and is threatened to go into Moldova and Transnistria, who previously invaded Chechnya and Georgia, they are nuclear-armed nations. China, which again is threatening their neighbors such as Taiwan and other regional allies of the United States, nuclear-armed nations. So when we talk about pushing for peace, and working for peace. It's not some question of far-flung regions around the world that have nothing to do with America and have nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with the people that we quote unquote don't care about and don't see around the world. These are threats that exist to the future of humanity and the future of this planet itself. And to have petty skirmishes over patches of dirt, taking the lives of tens of thousands of people, and watching the scenes of horror that we see around the world, we have to work to push back against that. And particularly right now in an American election year, where we have the military-industrial complex, which just was able, despite Congress not being able to get anything else done, they were able to pass a $886 billion defense authorization bill to spend more money on bombs and rockets and bullets to support the military-industrial complex. A Congress that can't get anything else done is currently debating the aid packages, both for Taiwan and Ukraine and for Israel. Equaling up to over $100 billion in aid that we want to send around the world for warfare. Imagine if we spent that same $100 billion on food, housing, education, medical supplies, advancement around the world, as opposed to killing around the world. And when our elected officials vote for these things, it's for one simple reason: money. Because the defense and the military-industrial complex are able to contribute to every single congressional campaign around the country. They are able to build factories and plants in every congressional district. So if any congressperson votes against defense authorization, votes against more war, votes against more spending on death, it can be said that you are voting against jobs in your own district. You'll get primaried by somebody who is financed by them. You'll be pushed out of office in all but the most extreme situations because you don't have the same support for the cause of peace as we have for the cause of war. So I've been invited to speak there by Reverend Jackson and am there today. Because of this, we're going to pre-record the show today and bring you a conversation that we rarely have in the context of Black history and Black liberation, and that is this conversation on the times that we have won. I want to spend the next couple hours highlighting times that Black people won against colonialism, times that we fought back. Too often the story of Black history over the course of the last 500 years has simply been a parade of terribles, a parade of horribles, the oppression of our people, the destruction of our people. But we rarely talk about the times that we fought back and that we won, that we pushed back the people who sought to enslave us, that we pushed back the people who sought to subjugate us and steal our land and steal our people and steal our blood and put us into chains around the globe. And so we're going to be touching on situations, whether it be the Maroons in Jamaica, the anniversary of the Haitian Revolution, the Battle of East San Luana in South Africa during the Zulu Wars with the British, and Benin, the War of the Golden Sule. We're going to be touching on many of these wars that took place that they do not want us to know about because they are afraid that if we learn that we fought back against empires and won, that it will inspire us today to fight back against empires and win. That if we start thinking about ourselves in this context of peace and this context of being able to fight back against these global forces, well, then that will encourage us. That will change the way that we think. That will change the way that we view ourselves. Why do you think they make a brand new slave movie every 4 or 5 years? Because they want to remind you that you should be happy to have any level of freedom and be happy that the people who formerly enslaved you were nice enough to let you be free for a little while. We hear this all the time in this context of debates over Civil War monuments, where conservatives will say, well, we fought a war to let you be free. That's not true at all. And we have to make sure that our people know and understand that we fought for our own freedom and liberation, that we have fought from the beginning. It's not simply that people showed up on boats and we just shuffled on board because we didn't know no better. These were battles, these were fights, and sometimes you have to have through strength. So while we are in Chicago discussing these issues of global peace and global health and global wellness, how to stop wars that are occurring around the world, I want to take some time to highlight issues and circumstances where people were able to fight back against these massive empires seeking to subjugate them, the same way that we're seeing the Palestinian people fight back against subjugation in their land today, and the same way that we're seeing the nations of the Sahel fight back against French colonialism today. And I want us to understand the way that those fights have worked towards this place where we can actually have freedom in this world. Before we get to that, earlier in the show, we're going to be talking about some current news that's taking place to make sure we're updating everybody. But throughout the show, I want people to join us on social media. You can join us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Robert Patillo to talk about these conversations on why they will not tell us the times that we won and why that's not part of the narrative. There's only so many times I can watch a movie about black folks being put in chains and being whipped the hell out of and being beat the hell out of until you get tired of it, until it psychologically breaks down your community to thinking that all you ever do is lose. So we're going to talk about the times that we won. So we'll be back after the break. We'll be back after the break to talk about some current news events. You're listening to News and Talk 1380 WAOK.